and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
26th, 2022 meeting of the Exeter Budget Recommendations Committee. I am Bob Kelly, the chair of the committee, and we'll start by doing introductions, proceeding to my left.
Hey, Chair and Subcommittee Chair for Library, Parks and Rec, and Human Services Sundays.
Chris Zigmon, 22 Crestview Drive, also on Subcommittee for Parks and Rec, Library, and Human Services.
Evening, everyone. Corey Stevens, Finance Director.
Good evening, Russell Dean, Town Manager.
Bring the people to my right.
Go ahead.
Andrew Elliott. I'm 42 Washington Street and DPW Subcommittee. Thank you.
Anthony Swan, 7 Marlborough Street, and I'm on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
Kathy Corson, 3 Folsom Street, Police and Fire.
Judy Rowan, 33 Prentice Way, Chair of Police and Fire Subcommittee.
Liz Canada, 58 Columbus. I'm on the Library, Parks and Rec, and Human Services Committee.
Anna Grazier, 8 Warren Ave, General Government Subcommittee.
I wanted to make sure I said thank you. We had 3 BRC members that were at Monday night's meeting, and I really appreciate that. I was watching from home, but Judy and Chris and Ton were there for another nice long meeting and soaking up all the details, so I appreciate that.
Excellent. Also with us this evening are Nico Papakostandis, the chair of the Select Board, Nancy Belanger, a Select Board representative as well, Melissa Roy, the assistant town manager, and I think that's it. Oh, and Joanna Bartel, our minutes taker, par excellence. All right, this evening we're going to be going over the police and fire budgets. Judy Rowan is the chair of that subcommittee, assisted by Kathy Corson, and we have the chiefs here who we will Judy will introduce, and we'll go through their respective budgets. Judy, take it away. Thank you.
We know where the police chiefs are?
We heard they might be on a call, so we're checking on that.
Okay, so I can, I'll start in with my summary and we'll see where they are, and maybe we'll do fire before we do police.
I'm okay with that.
Snooze, you lose, right? Fine, go out on a call.
I tried to summarize the budgets for you all. Unlike many municipalities throughout the U.S., the Exeter Police Department and Fire Department are fully staffed with high morale reported in both departments. This reflects the considerable investment the town has made in benefits, equipment, and training. Both departments are well-resourced with excellent leadership. Budget increases in each department are mainly a result of contract agreements, CBA negotiations, and inflation. Both the Police Department and Fire Department have continued to increase in diversity by hiring more female officers or firefighter AEMTs. Police Department has 4 female officers. The Fire Department had 4, and now they have 3. The subcommittee recommends no changes to the Police Department and Fire Department preliminary budgets. This may be a first. All PD patrol officers respond to animal control issues. The funding for the animal control officer has been shifted to create a second lieutenant's position responsible for professional standards and accreditation. As part of its community policing philosophy, the PD has added Maple, a chocolate lab puppy who is funded through community donations. The fire department responded to about 4,000 calls this year, approximately 2,500 of which were emergency medical service calls. The fire department has been affected by supply chain issues resulting in delayed equipment and turnout gear, as well as replacement vehicles and apparatus. Replacement Engine 5 now has a delivery date of July 2023, and Ambulance 1 is anticipated to take 18 to 24 months to deliver. Fire department line items, vacation replacement overtime, personal replacement overtime, and sick replacement overtime are the line items that keep the fire department fully staffed per shift. Salary, wages, callback overtime is used for call of, call of firefighters off duty to cover courses, prevention classes, training, large-scale emergencies, etc. Retirements, resignations, and long-term injury illnesses contributed to overtime expenses this year. The department has instituted incentives to reduce overtime. Looking at vehicles and the CIP, there are no new vehicles have been requested by the PD. 2 vehicles are encumbered from 2021 due to supply chain issues, and 2 for 2022 will be arriving this month. The PD requested ARPA funds for new tasers. Instead, tasers will be purchased through a 5-year lease purchase agreement for $177,705 at $22,133 per year and listed as a warrant article. The fire department is still awaiting delivery of its Ford F-250 pickup to replace Car 3 ordered in 2021. The subcommittee does not support the request for the inspector vehicle replacement. That's on pages 42, 43 of the CIP booklet. Though 12 years old, it has under 60,000 miles on it, indicating it is used an average of under 5,000 miles annually. The subcommittee supports in principle the proposed conceptual scheme for the police complex with fire substation. That's page 3. And I have in parentheses, because I didn't know what was going to happen Monday night at the presentation, what the select board might decide. We reserve the right to change our minds should new information make the project unsupportable, just in case. The town manager provided an amortization schedule that would be proposed for the funding of the building on a 20-year bond. The first-year tax impact on a $300,000 property would be $192. That's divided into 2 tax payments. Subsequent years would see the impact drop down to a low of $111.
Before you get going, Judy, just Russ, can you refresh the committee and viewing public's memory about our payment schedule for equipment that it takes a long order period, actually before we accept it? You know, what are our financial obligations?
So it depends on the kind of vehicle and equipment you're talking about. Lately, when we've been ordering things like just the hybrid Explorer comes to mind in Public Works as an example, that was approved in 2022, and there's been, it's October now, so there's been a 7-month lag with that. So on average, I think we're seeing those sorts of supply chain issues impacting most of our vehicles and equipment. Obviously, you see the police cruiser issues that they've been having in trying to get theirs. The lease purchases with the fire department, Chief Wilking has talked about that before. In terms of the SCBA equipment and the Engine 5, we prepaid the lease purchase on both of those, but we have neither of them. And we're expecting the engine in 2023. And the SCBA equipment, I think the last time we checked was November.
Should be the end of the month.
And so November, late October. So that gives you an idea of sort of the challenges that we've had in the different areas.
So I guess the good news on Engine 5 is that it'll actually be paid off before the actual time frame, because we'll be paying for a year or so.
Well, it's a 7-year lease, so as long as it gets here next year, I think we'll be okay.
Excellent. Great, thank you. Sorry, Judy. Proceed.
The prepaid got us a discount as well, if I'm not mistaken, when we purchased. So.
Excellent.
We have Chief Pullen and Deputy Chief McCain with us. Do you need a moment to catch your breath?
No, we apologize for.
You're ready to go right into the depths?
I am. Yes,
Very good. Well, I wanted to thank you for preparing such a lean budget and spending so much time with us answering our questions. Appreciate that. I neglected to introduce Kathy Corson, who's been an integral part of this subcommittee. And so, going forward with the police department, we're not recommending changes in the budget. However, there are a number of items I wanted to call attention to, and I imagine you have questions about anyway. So, the first is salary wages. You may see that this is fairly high and anticipated to be high next year. Though the department is fully staffed, there have been 4 new officers hired, and new officers need to be fully trained, and some attend the police academy. And 1 officer is on injured status. But only 1 officer is able to be solo now, so that's why we're anticipating that overtime will be relatively high next year. Any questions on that?
Wait, can you explain that again? About the last bit about only 1 person allowed to be solo?
Yes, new officers buddy up with an experienced officer.
Oh, the new officers.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's part of their orientation and training until they're ready to go solo. Is that a fair description?
Yes, so we have 3 officers in field training. We may look fully staffed on paper, but in the terms of overtime, it takes about 7 months for them to be solo. So we're still filling in those open shifts with overtime.
Okay. Down on holiday pay, this is an item that will be spent. Checks for holiday pay are sent out, first pay period in November.
Where are you on your flow sheet for that?
Sorry, 51420. Next item, 51450, education incentive. This is a reinstated item via the CBA. There's as it says, it's an education incentive. There's $500 incentive pay for associate's degree, $1,000 for bachelor's degree, and $1,250 for master's degree. So we have an intelligent, educated workforce. Other items that will be spent, 55043, community relations. This is the Jason Schreiber media consultant, public information work. 55045, vehicle computer equipment that will be spent. As you can see, the difference between what is actual and what had been budgeted, just for the audience's ton.
Go ahead, finish up your sentence. You good?
I'm just making clear to our viewing audience what we're doing here. There's a difference on paper between what has been spent and what was budgeted, and a lot of these just have to do with time.
Yeah. If I may? Todd? Thank you. I think you just went by community relations,
Yes.
right? So let's, for the viewers at home, line number
55043.
55043, $7,500 for the police department, if I've got it correct, right? But that includes a variety of things, right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
And relative to the social media component of that, where do we stand budget-wise, and where do we stand with that program since it was brand new last year?
It was, and, obviously, we deem it as a success, and so does the stats on social media. So that's 5,000 for him. It remains 5,000.
Okay.
And then the rest, like you said, National Night Out, crime prevention, child badges, child safety seats if we need them, and plaques. Those are the rest that comes out of there. Anything that's might be community relations related.
Yeah. How are you, how do you assess the social media relations part of it? I noticed some things early on in the year. I haven't, I suppose a lot of it's Facebook, so it depends on algorithms and the like, but I haven't seen as much lately, so I'm just curious, how do you assess it?
We're posting at least once a week now, but we assess it by, we've gained over 1,500 followers, and a lot of our posts, the major posts have gone news down to Boston. I've made a lot of media outlets calling us about things, and we hear it from our folks, our citizens say, what a great job that is. We're really seeing the transparency. I've heard your police department's actually, instead of talking to us, they're, kind of inviting us into what we're doing. So I think that's all positive things.
I think this is all part of the department's philosophy of community policing, reaching out to the community.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I'll just finish up quickly. We did dig into that. I did dig into that a fair amount at last year's deliberations, and I initially was very skeptical, but in the context, as you recall, but in the context of particularly community police relations, which is, I think, where you were coming from as well, relative to Black Lives Matter and other issues and the like. I did a 180 on it, and I did think it was worthy of being funded. So I thought that was great, and I thought that was very proactive on your part. I did, and you recall, I pulled you out offline after the meeting and sort of put out there that I was concerned, and this is by way of, frankly, setting it up for the fire department. I was concerned that that the funds be truly used for those kinds of things, so the community relations, outreach, response to, skepticism about policing or concerns about policing, et cetera, right? You recall that conversation? It was very brief.
Yes, I do.
And my point was with that also that I was concerned that the funds not be used to advocate for certain budget positions or projects or the like, that I would be uncomfortable seeing taxpayer funds to be used in that way. That was the gist of what I was trying to say. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so I just wanted to lay that groundwork and just reinforce that relative to how you use such funds. I hope I articulated myself reasonably well there. Kathy?
I think it's important to understand that, first of all, while I read and support the newspaper, there's a lot less reporters out there. And so the information is not getting out to people. And so things like this, which is really, and I support this with the fire too, and there's not somebody going in and doing a deep dive on the conditions that we see at the fire and police. So while their post can't be like vote for warrant article number 1, their post can be like, hey, did you realize that we can't walk up the stairs to get to the fire department? We can't take care of somebody that's in need, that needs privacy. with a disability. We can't, go into a room with them and help them out. This is probably the only way we're going to get this message out. And it's not saying vote for this. It's saying, here's the conditions of your town. And I think it's really, really important with the lack of reporting that is happening when you only have, we used to have, at every meeting in town, we'd have a reporter from 2 papers. When I started 20 years ago. Foster's Daily was here and the newsletter and it came out twice a week and it didn't have national news on it. So, this is a good, clean way to get the message across. And I really appreciate seeing, the human side of the police and fire department.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Sure.
Just, to pile on, I guess, I'd say that it is a very noisy world out there, and I really applaud the work that the police department has done with the social media. I'd love to see more, and I'd love to see the fire department have the same tool. Like all tools, they can be used the right way and the wrong way, but they've really been using it in an exceptional way. I give full-throated support to expanding that across as many town departments as we can, because we have a really diverse citizenry, and from 108 to 18, they all get their news and information in a lot of different ways. And, would I love to see a TikTok channel and all those sort of things? Absolutely. I think an expansion as it becomes appropriate, I'd fully support, because it is one of the many ways. We'll still need to engage the news media, the print news media, the TV news media, and things like that. But social media, like it or not, is here to stay, and we need to keep people informed. So.
I have a question about the mechanics of the social media program. I also have really enjoyed keeping up to date on what's happening with the department when I see it, and that comes back to what Tom mentioned about the Facebook algorithms selectively presenting information to some viewers and not to others. So I'm curious what other outlets these posts are posted to or pushed out to. Are they sent out in the form of a press release? Are they put on Instagram? Are they put on the department's website? Which I haven't visited any of those places, but I'm curious.
Good questions. So they get put on Twitter at the same time. Press releases would be for the more serious things, but what we've seen is the media takes right from our post, and they'll take that as their press release.
Yeah.
I think media is just really short-staffed like everywhere else, and that's why we're not really seeing many of them around, but they will just take right from our post and copy and paste it verbatim into the paper. Instagram we do have, but we need to do more work on that. That's something actually Jason identified as needing more work, is Instagram.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to preview where I'm going with this, I respectfully disagree with Kathy's analysis of it. I think I was pretty clear on what my opinion on it is. I totally am supportive of where the police department was coming from. I have no problems with what I've seen and what they've done. But we're not in, when we had reporters coming in, we didn't pay them to come in. This is a budget item. This is taxpayer money. I think it's granted, this is ultimately going to be a policy issue for the select board and for the chair, for the department heads, but I'm fine with this budget item for the police department, again, from the perspective of a very challenging time in community police relations in the years preceding it, recruitment, morale, all of what went on in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and God knows for how long before that. But again, I think it's important to keep it as much focused on that, on community relations, and not, let's say, the condition of our police station or our fire station or what have you. That's my opinion, and that's what's going to inform my decision on how I'm going to vote on these budget items. And that's my preview for the next department relative to this budget item. Just putting it out there. It's just one man's opinion, but I'm just putting it out there.
So, if I may, given what the chief said, and Kathy as well, the lack of coverage, I think for $7,500 is pretty cheap insurance that the right message gets out there and not some random blogger or whatever. So, this is something that was identified last year for this exact reason, to get the right information. And I think, I don't know, I certainly have enough respect for our chiefs that they're not going to be soapboxing about the condition of their department. This is about providing a better face for the department and for the town. So I understand your concerns, Tom, but I don't think that's not what the tool is intended to be, and that's not the way it's been worked out so far. So I would make sure that we sort of focus on what the intent of this budget item was. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I just like just to make sure that, that was Kathy's opinion on how it could be used. It's not saying that's what they were doing with the Facebook posts. So just make sure that's
Parts of it, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I'm just saying it wasn't what, that's just what you thought was something it could be used for, not something that I see being done. And also, I have to agree that if the newspaper is not going to report on it, somebody's going to come up with some statement. And if it's not you guys, it's going to be somebody else that doesn't really know, but they're going to say it anyways. They usually say it really loud, because the less you know, the louder you are. So we have to have some tool.
And we have Channel 22. And we have Channel 22.
Not the same thing.
Yeah.
Justin, you had a comment?
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I'm going to steal the police thunder, but I think it's important to recognize that Jason Schreiber was a professional and is a professional reporter, which none of us up here are. So none of us anticipate electioneering, which is against the law. So us to promote anything with tax dollars when it comes to anything with voting on any articles would be illegal. So that's not something we'll be taking part in. I can speak easily for both departments, but I have found with Jason personally, who is not a social media expert, but has uses social media, at times where he can craft something that I would not or others would not be able to craft. My strengths and experience and expertise is not in writing. And the articles, I can share a quick personal story. My significant other read an article recently about one of our employees, and she's like, this was really, really interesting. I never knew that this individual served in the military and did all these other really interesting things in his life. And that just brings, I think, as a community, it brings us all together, because now you brings that, somebody mentioned earlier, that personal feeling where we're personalizing who we are. We're just not, a budget in town. We're a bunch of professionals who are out there supporting and contributing to the society. And I think it's important for people to know who you hired and who you have working for you. So I personally have found this to be a great experience. We let the police department kind of go for 6 months and see how they did with it before we jumped on board. But seeing the work that was done through Jason Schreiber with the police department, for us, it became a no-brainer. Like, this is something we need to be doing as well. And there's a lot of good press. And if you recently noticed on Channel 9, the duck race, there was a small blip in the duck race on the river. That was a verbatim taken directly from our webpage on what happened. That was a Channel 9 news story that was taken directly from us. So I think it's very well worth the money.
Excellent. So with that, we'll move on.
And the Children's Fund appreciates your support for our event.
Okay, we're down to vehicle computer equipment 55045, and that's another one of those items that will be spent. Similarly, there are a number of these going down here. 55047, computer maintenance service contract. And I'll have the chief speak to the changes in the software agreement when we come to that item later on. That's okay.
Hey, Judy, just real quick. I think it's always good, since you think people look at this online, God bless them if they do, or watch this, that we mention a number of times with folks that, line hasn't been spent, but it will be spent. So if there are people actually, at home looking at these numbers across the board, all the apartments kind of sit on as much as they can, just in case, and don't spend it till the end of the year. It's not that it isn't needed, it's not that it doesn't get spent, it's just tends to get spent at the end of the year, and that's pretty much almost every department.
And sometimes invoices don't come in until later on. If you're interested, we could ask what percentage of the budgeted amount has been spent, if you want to.
Well, unless it's something that someone is actually interested in, I would say.
But we can ask about that if anyone's interested. And on down to 55050, conference rooms and meals. There's a difference in next year's budget in that the chief is planning to attend a professional conference next year. Not having been able to attend conferences in person for the last couple of years, he would like to be able to do that next year. Similarly, 55057, that item will be spent. This is the changed situation. You may recall previously the town subcontracted with Rockingham County Attorney's Office for $96,000, our prosecutor service. When Detective Mulholland has interest and expertise in that area, volunteered to take over those activities and do them in-house in tandem with attorneys with per diem contracts. So this is a substantial decrease from what the arrangement had been in the past, and it's working very successfully.
So, did you say that this line will be spent? Is that the anticipation? Are there things out there that
So with court, we don't know what could be down the horizon with what he'll need help with an attorney. It will be spent more than it is now. We may not spend all of it this year. He is thinking about retiring in July and talking about staying part-time with us in that position, and we're in negotiations with that, so we would still need the 35 if that were to happen next year.
Okay. Yeah, I would say make a note to review that based on personnel changes, because for the last, depending what happens this year, for the past 3 years, our costs in that line have been significantly less than the budget. So I think we want to just keep ahead.
That line is budgeted as it is. I believe the chief has said to allow for some of these complicated cases to come up, and there'll be sufficient budget there for them. But that's an unknowable.
Of course it is. But we have similar line items, especially in public works, for unknowable situations, and the budget is a lot less. And whatever happens, happens. So it's just worth keeping an eye on for next year, I think. Yes.
Okay, and dropping down to 55106, equipment purchase. In addition to what has been spent, new hires need to be outfitted, so that line item will be spent. Looking at 55199, office equipment maintenance. That is also a line item that will be spent, as will 55200. Again, supplies and that sort of thing, the department holds off to get through the year. And 55270, software agreement. Chief, if you could explain, there are some changes here. There's the interconnection with the state and improved computerized record keeping for the department. If you could just explain what those contracts are about.
Yes, so we're now part of the J1 network, which basically says we're communicating with the state on our accidents and our traffic tickets and our the data that's contained within those. So in order to do that, we've had to add a module, a J1 mobile client module to our RMS. And that was $1,475. And what that does is when we have a traffic accident, the officers will create the report in the laptop and then automatically send that to a sergeant electronically. Once that gets approved, it electronically goes to the state. So they have that data on injuries, fatalities, different roads where the accidents are happening. They have all that data. Instead of trying to ask each agency for the data, they get it immediately. Traffic citations, same thing. Once that citation is imported into the computer, it'll get approved. It goes directly to court. Instead of being in the mail or having to be delivered to court, less paperwork at the court, it's electronic. So that's why we needed that extra module just to get that done. And it's something that all police departments are going to. We were one of the last in Rockingham County to do it. So we were able to get that done. The other increase in that line item is for our new scheduling software. And prior to this, we've been doing our entire police department scheduling on kind of an Excel, kind of a spreadsheet that was all input by, there were no formulas because we have so many different schedules. We have the 8-hour 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, then we have a swing of 5 p.m. to 3 a.m., and we have a 9 to 5 schedule, and then we have detectives on their own Monday through Friday schedule. So what was going on, some shifts weren't getting filled, weren't getting caught. Other times officers were coming in when they didn't need to come in. It was a lot of human error there. So we had our new lieutenant research some scheduling software, 5 different companies. This one called DTS is the best one we found, and they're amazing. So it doesn't allow for mistakes. You're assured coverage when you need it. Nobody can double cover. The officers also have an app on their phone. Instead of posting a piece of paper downstairs, they now have an app that will get an alert. It will say it's open shift available. They can bid by seniority on that. They get alerted when they get awarded that shift. They get alerted for overtime. All those things they can put in for holidays off. They could put in for a personal day. It's all done mobile. So we saw a great increase in morale just for that alone. So that cost is $4,080 for that for a year. And those are the 2 increases in that line item.
Thank you. And we have a new line item, 55390, comfort dog expenses. So Chief, could you tell us about Maple and how she fits into community policing, how she's going to be used?
Absolutely. So Maple's going to be a fully trained comfort animal through Hero Pups. It's an Exeter-based company. And she's still in training. It's going to take almost a year for her to train fully before we can take physical care of her. But Bailey Texera, who's our juvenile detective, is her handler, and they're working together. They're training together for the greater part of the year, and they're working great together. So Bailey has actually approached us with this idea, and the kinds of victims that she deals with are mostly children of some very bad crimes, and just having that comfort dog there to help break the ice at a CAC interview will be immense. Other benefits are obviously she's attended the National Night Out, she's attended the UFO Fest, and people that may not normally come up to a uniformed officer, when they see Maple, they come right over to Maple, and then that helps break the ice with us too, whether it's kids or adults. Can be used for anything. A local company had a tragic event happen, and Hero Pups went in there for a whole week, just went in there for a couple hours a day, just so the employees can go and spend, 15 minutes or lunchtime with the puppies or with the dog, and they saw a huge increase in everyone's mental health, well-being. So the animal will be used for really anything, department heads or schools. She's been at the first day of Main Street School as well. Really open to exploring what else we can offer. Senior center, things like that. We'll bring Maple wherever we can. But that's the point of Maple. And I'm sorry, but I didn't want to see it in here as an expense. It's very important because we don't want any expense to the taxpayers with Maple, but we had to. So we anticipate it's going to be funded fully through donations. I've already heard that some pretty big companies are willing to donate. So we've already started kind of a small fundraiser for this, and that was our UFO patches, and we raised over $2,000 in 15 minutes. And that's all going to the Comfort Dog. So as we get further into, the new year and whatnot, we'll fundraise some more, but I fully anticipate that there will be no expense to the taxpayers for Maple.
For the future as well, not just this budget year, but
correct.
You anticipate no expenses entering the budget in future years.
Right. There's other police departments that have done this same thing and have gone to donations and whatnot. They actually receive more money than they can spend, too much. So we'll put a cap on it. I'm in touch with Corey about this whole thing, but people will want to donate to this cause.
How will that be reflected in the budget?
Well, I was going to ask the same thing. So wouldn't this still be an expense and then the donations would be revenue?
I was going to say, there'll always be an expense line for Maple in the budget, but there'll be offset revenue, which we can tell you what that is next year.
Perfect.
As well. But you'll always see the appropriate or the expense line.
But it would be valuable, probably put that in the notes, maybe that there's an offset somewhere, just so when people on TV.
Yeah, a note would be good.
Sure.
That was Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is there, I don't want to micromanage, but what are the logistics of this? And fast forwarding to a future facility, how are you going to accommodate a dog in a police station or in a police car?
It's a good question. So Maple will go home. She'll live with Bailey.
Okay.
And then we have a secondary handler also, just in case something happens to Bailey or Bailey decides she doesn't want to do it anymore. We have got a general order on the whole program, so everything's been vetted.
So there's no need for making space available in future facilities for such a dog or other animals and the like? No. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Well, let's hope when she goes to work, she'll have a bed to lie in.
Hopefully she'll have a little dog bed in a nice corner, exactly, yeah, but good, but not
I'll take her
necessarily a
if
special
you guys go on
room or
vacation,
anything.
if your handler's on
We'll have to
vacation.
put a dog park out back. She's going to get a lot of treats. Okay, Judy and Kathy, proceed.
Okay, that is it for the department.
Any further questions on any of the police items for the chiefs or for Judy and Kathy?
I did just look up the organization Hero Pups. It's an all-volunteer organization, which is pretty impressive. That's very hard to pull off, trust me.
So Corey, could you update us on the benefits total for the department, please?
So benefits for police is now $1,172,037, 1172037.
Thank you. And then a total police department budget?
Total police department is $3,653,837. 3653837.
I'll entertain a motion for that department budget.
Dr. Swan?
Second?
Second.
Judy seconds it. No further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And there are no vehicles requested, as I said in the summary, and tasers will be on the warrant. $177,705, 5-year lease purchase agreement at $22,133 per year.
So that'll be discussed at CIP night, the tasers. If there are any questions on that line, bring them up now so that the chief can research those. But if there are no questions, what's the page number of that? The tasers?
It's way at the back.
Judy, I'm sorry if I gave you a wrong number. So it's actually more like 110,000, not 177. If you take the 22,000 if you take the 22,000 annual payment times 5, it's more like 110,000.
Oh, that's good.
The 177 is actually another number. I'm not remembering which one now, but the tasers are at 110,000 for the total investment.
110,000.
Hold on one second. It's 110665.
665?
Yes.
1065.
Oh,
110665, the total cost for the tasers. I could have multiplied that and figured that out. Okay, and so if there are any questions about the tasers.
Tom?
I have an unrelated question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
For the police chief and for maybe Russ, refresh my memory where we stand on electric police cruisers. I seem to recall there was some purchases planned in that regard a year or two ago, but time just flies by. Where do we stand on that? What came of that?
We were able to get 1 out of our 4. Extreme shortage. We obviously want all the hybrids, but even with 1 out of the 4, that will make 4 out of 5 of the patrolling cars that are out there 24/7 hybrids.
And for the patrolmen and patrol people driving the cars, how do they like the hybrid versus the gas car? How's it gone over with the staff?
They like it for the most part. The only part where there's a little difference in it is if they have to do a 3-point turn, it can be a little slower.
Okay, just re-engaging.
Re-engaging, yes. But other than that.
Thank you for that update.
Bob, in the interest of the chief's time, do you want them to hang around to go through the fire department before we discuss the CIP, or have them discuss the police station part of it at this point?
That's a good point. What I was going to do, we had the joint meeting on Monday to give folks who did not have or had some questions on the proposed public safety complex. We weren't going to discuss it in detail this evening. That'll be at our November CIP meeting, but if there were any questions either that came out of Monday or just in individuals' research about the proposal, now would be the time to bring those up so that if there were responses to be crafted by either the chiefs or the town manager, that we would have time to do that. So that's a good call. So why don't we'll open it up for a few minutes. If there are any specific questions relating to the police portion of the public safety complex, we'll discuss the fire portion with Chief Wilking and Deputy Chief Pison. So if there are any specific questions related to the police portion of the proposal, certainly entertain those now.
Bob, if I could.
Sure, Russ.
Just to let you know, too, we still need to do the police dispatch budget.
Ah, yes.
Where's that? Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Hold back in at 10 o'clock tonight.
There are absolutely no questions about it. That's why I didn't highlight it. Thank you for,
Where do I find that?
Communications. 16, right?
Page 16,
we have, the shared
services.
services.
Thank you, Russ.
Communications. That's a good catch. We had no questions about it, and I assumed you wouldn't either.
It's only my second year on the committee, I'm sorry. Still updating myself here. Yeah.
So we need a update?
Well, are there any questions about the communications division? So updated benefits, Corey?
Sure. Updated benefits, $128,124, 128,124.
Thank you. And then total communications?
Total communications is $436,862, 436,862.
I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved. Anthony Swan.
Tom, and second? Chris Suter, thank you. Further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And health is discussed under the fire department. Okay, so seeing no questions about the police portion of the public safety complex, I guess you're good to go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And, filling in some of the information on your new initiatives. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
On to fire, Judy.
So we have Chiefs Wilking and Assistant Chief Pizon with us. I want to thank you both for another lean budget and all of your time that you spent answering our many questions, including right down to this afternoon with Chief Wilking. So I appreciate it. I'd like to just briefly look at the overtime situation. It's always an area that we're concerned with and want to look at. Before we get there, there's 51121 salary wages incentive. As with the police department, there's a restored line item, restored through contract negotiations for incentive work toward or completion of educational degrees. Okay, now looking at overtime, we have 3 line items, 55150, 51130, and 51410. That's vacation replacement overtime, personal replacement overtime, and sick replacement overtime that keep the fire department fully staffed per shift, while the salary wages callback overtime is for off-duty firefighter EMTs who are called in to replace firefighters doing a course or a class, engaging in training, or in response to large emergencies. That's when this line item is utilized. Any questions about overtime?
Andrew?
So it's not necessarily about overtime per se, but just looking, since I'm new to this group here, the Budget Recommendation Committee, the town has grown roughly, like, looking back to the 80s, like 30%, but the fire department has grown like almost double that. Is it because we're doing more things now than we were then, or density of population? Like what? Like the number of employees is more than double than it was in the 80s. So just trying to figure out, we covering more time, or like, just if you could just.
No, I think that's a great question, and I think it was alluded to a little bit on Monday night when we talked about the fire station where we are.
Apologize.
The fire department really has had more employees in the 80s than they do now, but they're different employees. In the 1980s, volunteerism and the call force was enormous. There were 40 people on the call fire department that handled the vast majority of larger calls. The career force in the 80s, when we transitioned from 30 court to 20 court, had 12 firefighters.
That's
so
what
they
I
had
saw.
4 per shift,
Yep.
and 3 shifts, and then we morphed it around over the course of a few years to what we see today as a 4-shift model. But that is a great question. As time moved on, volunteers waned. I arrived in Exeter in 2005, and we still had about a 20-person call force at that time. By that time, we had transitioned to 5 people a shift from the 4, and then the call company continued to wane. We seek trained individuals. We have a ride-along program. We have all the call volunteers around us in all the towns. I won't mention them all, contiguous to Exeter, that come and ride with us. But getting somebody to commit to that call volunteer aspect for a fairly or very low wage, not being utilized that much, is a big ask. So what's happened over the last 40 years is we've transitioned from a predominantly call fire department to a predominantly career fire department with just a handful of call people left. Okay. So that's a metamorphosis that's happened not just in Exeter. Hampton moved in that direction, Portsmouth moved in that direction, Dover, Durham, has a handful. Most of the larger communities have morphed in that. Secondary to your question is we're an aging town. When the call firefighters were able to handle the calls in 1980, and I think I mentioned this at the meeting, the chief was all proud of his report, and he said that we responded to 762 calls. All right, we're over 4,000 now. So you talk about the ask of a volunteer when you start going to that many calls, you can quickly see. So, and obviously, we're respectful of the process. We understand that people cost money, and full-time people cost a lot of money. But that's where we're at today. We're now a 33-member, 32 fire department and a couple of administrative and health persons. Instead of 32 call guys, we have 32 career people. So that's the transition we've seen in the last 40 years.
So the number of actual people per shift is about the same, but a lot more career people than...
Correct. The call guys were never scheduled to work a shift, I guess, so it's kind of a misnomer. We had 3 people, 4 people on a shift, and then if the tone or some of you remember the horns would go off in the town of Exeter. When the horns were off, it signaled the box, and the call guys would count the number of blows on the horn. They knew they were going to the shoe factory, they knew they're going to the high school or the hospital. So we would have, upwards to a dozen call or volunteers show up to support those 3 or 4 career guys. They're non-existent today, so now we have shifts of 7 handling 2 ambulances and an engine. If you do the numbers, 2 in the lead ambulance, 2 in the second, and at least 3 people for an engine company. That's where the shifts of 7 have morphed to.
Tom?
Thank you.
This is a gut observation. Wouldn't you also agree that the fire department now does a tremendous amount of ambulance runs, whereas maybe in the 80s that was less the case? And do you see that as your role in changed in that regard? Rather than responding to a fire, but responding to tons of ambulance calls, some of which may be dubious, but nonetheless you have to do them. And being a physician, I can say that.
I don't disagree. Obviously, just by the nature of the number, 762 calls, there weren't a lot of ambulance calls. Exeter was one of the first communities to take on a municipal ambulance as far back as 1960. So you think about it, most ambulances are run out of the local hospital, or in some cases, to be very crass, they run out of the funeral home. And that's how EMS evolved from the 60s to 1980 and where we are today. We've been in EMS in Exeter probably longer than any other community in the state of New Hampshire. Our first ambulance was grant funded. The Federal Department of Transportation provided the town of Exeter with an old Cadillac ambulance, and it was off to the races from there. Judy and I spoke earlier this afternoon, and this year we're about 300 ambulance calls ahead of last year. So we're looking at a number that'll be greater than 2,500, maybe even higher than that by the end of the year. The saving grace to that, and we just talked about the comfort dog, and there's an expense and a revenue side. When we do 300 more ambulance calls in a year, there is a revenue aspect to that. So it sounds like we respond to a lot of calls and the expenses go up, but so does revenue. And we're starting to see it catch up in our last revenue numbers. So, but yeah, we do our fair share of ambulance calls. I won't say more than other communities, but Exeter does its share with our aging community.
Have you seen a lot of increase in car accidents as well?
Honestly, if you look at a 10-year period of time, and I'm a mathematician, statistics, if you've known my budgeting for 15 years, you kind of get the picture. It doesn't show that. Over the last 10 plus years, the averages remain the same. They're within, 2, 3, 4% every year, 100, 120 motor vehicle accidents. Some in the past were far more severe than they are today. Many more people are walking away today or have far less injuries, less severe injuries, but the numbers are about the same repeatedly, whether it's on 101 or the old 27. For those of you that lived through the days of not such a great highway going through Exeter on the way to Hampton Beach. So, but yeah, the numbers really haven't gone up for motor vehicle accidents, but they're still the same.
Judy?
And item number 55042, this is one of those questions about, will this item be spent? Communications equipment. Chief, perhaps you can speak to that. You said there's a new radio that's been purchased.
We did. When you and I spoke, or when we spoke with Kathy at the subcommittee meeting, I did some research, and I was looking at the budget that the budget committee tends to use, or at least your subcommittee uses, and it appears to me, and Corey's here to defend himself, but it appears to me that the budget you use when they pull the term 2022 actual, it captures invoices. And where the issues we're having today with supply chain is we have requisitions in for items that have yet to be shipped or invoiced. So in my budget that I look at that shows encumbrances and all, I'm at zero. But because the radio invoices lag behind for $6,200, it doesn't get posted into that actual line. And that remains true for a lot of items. I'll let you cover them if you like, but I know in the email I responded to you, I went down through most lines I believe are either in the negative or at zero already. So the answer is yes, just like the PD. We will be spending all the money in our budget line, and I gladly explain some of the line transfers that we had to do mid-year because of the hiring frenzy we were in. We've been spending money like crazy, so we had to really make some tough decisions on lines and how to move money around. So.
Okay, 55043, this is community relations again. The department had requested $5,000 in its initial budget, and $2,500 was cut at the town manager level. It was felt that $2,500 gives the fire department an opportunity to try out the service and assess its usefulness. And we have heard comments about how important that is. Did you want to speak to that?
If you don't mind, I'd like to throw some numbers out before, and respectfully, Dr. Schwan.
Yeah, thank you.
The police department didn't really bring you any numbers, but this is new to us, and I think Chief Pizon said it earlier. At this level last year, the question was asked, Does the fire department feel that they should engage in a professional to help with social media and other outlets? And we said at the time, respectfully, we'll watch for a minute and we'll assess. So and we did that. We watched, we saw a great deal of community relations through the PD side. We saw their social media and the way they're sharing information to really kind of blossom to the point where we brought Jason Schreiber in and said, how do we get involved? What will it cost and what does it do? We do not have a contract in the way that we would negotiate and whatnot, but we have an agreement with Jason for the same fee he charges the police department, which is $5,000 annually. I asked Jason to look through just Facebook and Twitter because, like the PD, we are not on Instagram. The Fire Department Facebook page had 2,620 viewers this past week alone. That's 400 more than we had when we were trying to post our own information before June. So you start to see some numbers. The Twitter account has picked up 200 new followers because he mirrors the posts to both. The page, our Facebook page, has reached 6,600 viewers in the past 28 days, meaning they saw the post at least once. 4,700 people have engaged in the post, either liking it, loving it, hating it, or commenting to it. So 4,700 people in the past month have engaged in our Facebook page. These are all things that he can pull off. Most posts have 100 or more likes, and as it's already been mentioned, the media outlets, the Union Leader, the WMUR, the Seacoast Online, or the Seacoast Media Group, capture those and rebroadcast or repost those in their mediums. And the duck race was the most recent example of that. So we feel it's an important part. And that being said, I'm respectful of the budget process. I understand tough decisions have to be made. I felt I was doing my job as the department manager when I felt that $5,000 of social media was a worthwhile expense. I sought lines in the budget that we were not totally spending, and I reduced our budget request by an equal amount. And it's fairly easy noticed. We reduced our budget line in emergency management command supplies by $1,500. We reduced communication equipment maintenance by $3,000, and I reduced our emergency management equipment line by $500. The total of those three lines was the $5,000. I was hoping to gain support for the social media program, thinking that it was going to be a no-impact process. Again, I'm respectful of the process, and whatever the decision you make, we will move on. We'll deal with it. But that was the rationale we had when we crafted the budget.
I have a couple questions about social media. I guess, first of all, I see, my gut is telling me that the goal for this engagement and this community relations effort is perhaps slightly different from that of the fire department. I'd be curious to hear from you how it differs, what the end results are. And then second, because not everyone is familiar with social media, I personally use it a lot, but I still struggle with things like numbers of likes and comments. If we could translate that into actual impact, what does 6,000 interactions with a post actually mean in terms of engaging with the community? Does it mean you're educating people about something? Does it mean people are aware of a new effort you're undertaking or a new hazard, if that makes sense?
I think you bring up a great question, and your gray-haired fire chief might not have the greatest answer to that. You know, I think, and I'm a late bloomer to social media, and most of the kids out there is Facebook is lame, but that's where I am. But I look at it as a way we share information, and I'll share with you a story without using any names. But a year ago at this time, we had a member of the select board come to the fire station. And at that time, the member of the Board of Selectmen was embarrassed to say, as they climbed the stairs, that they had never set foot in the firehouse before. So we have a citizen in town that ran and was selected to the select board, and they've never stepped foot in the firehouse. If we don't get our message out of who we are, who we have employed, what programs we're trying to run out to the public in every avenue possible, including the major social media posts, we're not doing our job. And we're not talking about electioneering. We're not talking about advocating for a positive vote on a subject. We're just talking about educating the public of who your fire department, the face of your fire department. Different from the police department, we did not have that negative vibe that kind of rolled out 2 or 3 years ago. Most people have looked at the fire department with a level of respect. Come out of 9/11 from that point on, you know, it ebbs and it flows, and firefighters do silly stuff. We have 35 people employed. We're a microcosm of society. We have everybody involved in our fire department. So you can see the news next week, and a firefighter could get, not Exeter, but might be arrested for doing something totally inappropriate. But it happens. But we'd like the town to know who the firefighters are, who your fire department is, and the initiatives we're doing. And we had a meeting with the communication, Bob Glowacki today, and we're looking for every means possible to get that message out as to who you have responding to your calls.
I wanted to add a little onto that. I think
he doesn't have the gray hair.
Yeah. I don't have any hair, so it's all gone. It's all fallen out. I think it's so. I want to answer so what do you get out? What do we get out of it as somebody who wasn't in the fire department that was looking at a social media post? I'll give you the great example. About 2 weeks ago, we had some Stryker. They're called power load equipment installed in our ambulances at the tune of $58,000. So I think that this is a great opportunity. There was two sides to that. We had wow, look at the new equipment we have, 100% decrease in back injuries on the ambulance and with cots now. That was great. And we did a little video. It was great. Also, it was important, we got to put out to everybody that this was bought through a grant. So we didn't, it was a matching grant, so we were on the hook for $8,000 as the town of Exeter, but $50,000 came in the form of a grant. And that was really important as a message to send, is that, hey, this is this new great equipment that we're obtaining, but we're also looking for different avenues on how to generate our own revenue. We're not just trying to take the tax base and spend money. We look for all those grant opportunities as well. So for people that are out there reading our posts, especially Exeter citizens, because there are people obviously outside of Exeter that are also following us, they get to see that what we're doing kind of behind the scenes a little bit that you would never have ever known about otherwise. And I think those messages, Jason does a great job. I mean, I looked at the way things are written, and that's the reason why they get picked up by other agencies as well, because he's writing it in a way that is a reporter. So I think that was a great example I wanted to share.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, Chris. I think when we look at this in a similar discussion that we had with the police department, first I think it's an expense well worth it because it gets back to discussions we had at the select board meeting the other night too. An informed citizenry is what we're looking for, right? And we need to continue to find ways to communicate with them. I am wondering though, as we evolve this, as it grows and evolves, that maybe the direction needs to be more towards a communication strategy and in equipping, staffers, members of the fire department, police department to manage the actual postings themselves, and following that, if Jason's helping you guys build a communication strategy that gets updated annually, reviewed annually, and then really helping develop, a social media playbook that your designated officers and firefighters can deploy throughout the year, because it's, that's a relatively, that's a common way to approach this from a media relations or public relations standpoint. That it's really because everybody's got a phone in their pocket. There's a way to manage this, and then using those precious hours with Jason, because it's expensive, to really handle the heavier lifts, the things that may have been a press release or a larger news item for those kind of things. But I think there's an opportunity here to evolve this to more of a strategic engagement in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you all know my sentiment on this. It's no disrespect to the fire department at all. I totally respect but I'm coming from it on a budgetary level as well. just a heads up, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I'm not going to make it this minute, but I'm going to make a motion with your permission down the line. I know how that's going to go, but I'm going to go through the formality of it, okay?
Is it on this line? Is it on this line?
On that line. On that line. Just to clarify my opinion on it and my position on it, I just do not, by the way, Chief and Deputy Chief, you did a great job, and you've done your homework, and you've given great examples, and you've been, and you were forewarned that I was going to bring this up, so that was good. So you had time to do that. Mr. Chair, please.
Yeah.
Our meetings aren't that long. We used to have many longer meetings. I put in a lot of time, Mr. Chair, on this committee, and I am due a little bit of...
Proceed with your
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Admonishing the chair.
So I just do not, for the reasons that I already enunciated, I just do not see the need for it in this department in the same way that it was laid out for the police department last year. Also, I would submit that our DPW and water and sewer committees, departments, also have, distinct missions and needs that might benefit from community relations as well. So where does it end? And how do we do that as a town? I will leave that to the select board. I know this is not a large amount of money, but I think it's an important conversation to have. And so I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Go for it.
That we eliminate the amount of $2,500 for line item 55043. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Do I hear a second to that motion? Seeing none, the motion fails for lack of a second.
Thank you.
And thank you for bearing with the conversation.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
I feel like this discussion, as well as the one earlier when we were on police, really illuminates a larger cultural and organizational problem that we're having in this moment in time. It's not even related just to our town. It has to do with how we communicate information to each other. Facebook is not adequate. Newspapers, unfortunately, are not adequate. Emails are not adequate. So there's a larger problem that we're trying to tackle piecemeal here. And I think we're left with the need to tackle these things piecemeal until our cultural technology catches up to this problem.
I want to add is I think it's important that this is a proactive approach. I mean, we're trying to be proactive in our identity and what we stand for. And what I don't want to ever see for us is being in a position that law enforcement and across the entire country is in. Now we're trying to catch up to something. Like we've learned a lot through their experiences over the last few years. And it's a good opportunity for us to be in front of that ball, to promote us as an organization and this town for it really is for a small, I'm not trying to minimize $2,500 or $5,000, it's still a lot of money, but I think that it's still, I'll stick to it as money well spent. I'm trying to be proactive in this approach.
Yeah, that's certainly true, but everybody has their own perspective. 8 years ago, many in town did not think we needed an economic development director, and look who that's worked out for us. Our tax rate has been very flat, thanks to our town manager and finance director's management, because of the work that person has done. So everybody sort of evolves and accepts change differently. So yeah, this is sort of a let's see how it goes, but the contrarian views are certainly welcome. Kathy.
As part of our subcommittee, Jason did send a letter to the chief, and he shared it with us. And I just pointing out what I sort of said already, and Anna, you have it spot on. What you just said is, for lack of anything, we have to do something. And he did point out, and I thought this was important, that it's also important, he said, it's also important to point out that while a post may have 100 likes, that doesn't mean that it only reaches reached 100 people. Facebook stats show that the reach is much greater. For example, a post about fire crews responding to a dump truck turn rollover that took down wires in July reached more than 15,000 people because people share that story or call up their mother and say, hey, there's a rollover on, don't go that way. There's a fire, there's a whatever. And so there's a safety aspect to this that, we no longer have that signal that tells us where that fire is or where that accident is. So, I personally would like to see $5,000 on this item because I do think that we have to throw something at it. And I didn't think that $2,500 was enough, but I wanted to side with Judy. I wanted us to be a complete subcommittee.
Well, you have two roles. One is a subcommittee member and one is a committee member, so it's certainly your call.
My view was the $2,500 gave the department an opportunity to begin the process, find out what it's like, how they could use this service, and evaluate whether it's going to be meaningful for them or if they need something different. But it would be a meaningful start for them. And given the overall budget is an increase of 3% I think it's important that we stick with the cuts that have been made. They're not easily made. I'm sure when this budget gets to the select board, they'll have to make additional ones that won't be easy either. But as taxpayers, we need to keep in mind what we're asking of the community as well.
In the interest of time, do you want to just proceed some of the expense items if people have questions on them instead of going through each one, or?
I just have a quick question about that.
Quick question it is.
Yeah, forgive me if I spaced it while people were talking about it, but the quote you were given is 5,000, but we're offering 2,500. So what good is that, or is it like if you had 2,500, would you have 6 months of?
So what Jason based, Schreiber News based his number on was how he was interacting with the police department.
Right.
And for the past August through October now, he has offered us the same level of service in the police department. If you follow the fire department page, you're seeing an average of 2 to 3 posts a week, identifying the people and the process and the calls we go on. We have 2 choices to make, and he's willing to work with us. We will either front load all of it, he'll continue for 6 months at the same rate, or he will back off on his involvement with us, and we may see 1 post a week. The concern he has, and with anybody out there that follows social media, is stale content. He just doesn't want our content to go stale. He wants our page to be vibrant. He wants us to be at the top of everyone's page as the algorithms, as I mentioned, show up. So that was what he based his $416 a month on, or whatever, average is $5,000. So we'll have to make a decision. Do we back up on posts?
Judy? Anything in particular you want to highlight for the rest of the expense budget?
Yes. There's another will be spent 55058 contract services. There are no questions on that. We have an interesting item, 55106, general equipment purchase. The fire department is no longer servicing fire alarm boxes. That decision was made in the past, was a line item, substantial in the past. Just want to call your attention as some of these decisions really make a big difference. And perhaps the chief can speak to the savings that the town has experienced by the department no longer servicing the fire alarm boxes.
So what line item is that?
But it's not that whole line.
This is 55106, general
is it part
equipment
of that line?
purchases.
No, the fire prevention lines are no longer in the budget because that was from 2020, I believe, is when we cut those out.
But this line item would have included hundreds of thousands of additional dollars in order to comply with the new fire alarm box situation.
So right where Judy's going, we had a discussion during the subcommittee meeting of what happened when we shut the fire alarm system off. And what happened was the businesses and facilities in Exeter that required monitoring sought local monitoring. And on average, it costs about $1 a day to have your fire alarm monitored by a independent third party. So on average, the expense to the businesses wasn't ginormous. But what we talked about with Judy and Kathy at the subcommittee meeting was part of the rationale for moving away from monitoring wasn't all expense and income. The monitoring was bringing in approximately $35,000. Expenses were in the $39,000 to $40,000. So you could already see if I was in business, I wouldn't be in business long because we're losing an average of $5,000 a year. But here's the big expense. If we had decided to stay in the business as 2020 rolled into 2021, due to changes in the industry and the code compliance, we would have needed to seek a warrant article to replace the equipment for a number between $150,000 to $200,000 just for the hardware. And monitoring would have required 2 additional dispatchers hired in the communication budget. After review with Town Manager Dean and others at that time, we decided it was time to part company with monitoring the fire alarm as we've done for 30 years. It was a hard decision, but business-wise, we were losing money every year, and we, in good conscience, could not bring to the voters a decision to spend upwards to $200,000 and hire 2 more dispatchers. So I think in retrospect, there were some bumps in the road. There were some businesses that were being monitored that we had no clue they were. They never got an invoice for years. So we didn't know they existed until all of a sudden they're not being monitored. So egg on our face, but those bumps in the road have been smoothed out. We're 2 years removed, and I think it was a good choice. Generally, we're still responding on calls. They're getting professional monitoring. We, as a town, didn't have to hire 2 additional dispatchers, and I think the other monies could be spent, so.
So you may be asking yourself how this affects town buildings. And you'll see next week and 3 weeks hence that there are some sizable increases to the public works and water and sewer budgets for fire alarm monitoring by private companies, as Chief Wilking alluded to. So
At the risk of editorializing, we had a discussion with the maintenance director and water sewer. To my knowledge, there are only 5 town buildings that require to be monitored.
Right.
I would put the town of Exeter in the same category as I would put any other business or place of assembly or school in this town. If the law requires you to monitor your fire alarm and maintain your fire protection equipment, our job is to enforce that law for the safety of all. If we are spending money to support and monitor a fire alarm system, for instance, in a wet well that has no life hazard whatsoever, then we are doing so with eyes open. It is not something the fire department, 1, recommended, or 2, is requiring. So when you hear very large numbers,
I don't think it's in wet wells. I think it's in occupied buildings. I think
we need to do 5. And
I think there's 2 in water and 3 in sewer.
$1,500, and we had an opportunity to enter into an agreement to use the water tower as a initiating location, and we probably could have got it for free. But we're rolling the clock back 2 years when all of that happened, and a lot has happened since then, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a
good history lesson.
Okay, we'll go down to hoses, 55149. That money has already been spent. The hoses have been ordered. Similarly with protective equipment, 55230. 2 new firefighters and 6 replacement firefighters due to retirement and resignations, all requiring new gear. So that is what that line item involves.
So
Any questions?
is it totally spent? Like, do you have year-to-dates on those two?
55230.
Well, yeah, you can do that one.
I have it through 9:30. Give me a second. Year-to-date spent 16.5 with another 21 encumbered, so there's 12,000 left on the budget through 9:30.
How much encumbered?
21. Sorry, 16,492 spent, 21,431 encumbered, 12,000 remaining on the budget.
It doesn't seem to add up.
Well,
Well, that is a line,
Corey's not really a math guy.
well, no, Corey is a math guy.
Just kidding.
The budget's for 50 in my,
We sought $13,700 in line transfers that we had to input into that line.
Got it.
That line was originally budgeted at
50.
36.3,
Right.
and we put an extra 13 into that for 50,000, and 12,000.
Yeah, we don't see that.
Yeah, I see that.
You don't see the ins and the outs. Again, that's the difference between the budget you get and the budget we work with daily. $12,000 is the 3 sets of gear at $3,200 set that we have purchased.
So we're going to
for.
spend the other,
It's gone. Again, my line is.
So you'll be spending
I'm at a negative
50,000
number
this
right
year.
now for the 3 people we just put on. So
Got it.
it's gone.
okay, thank you. And then on hose replacement, Corey, 55,149, what's the year?
Negative $109.
But before we go, sorry, so is there 3 more people coming next year? So it's 50,000
No, well,
for this year because there's 3 people.
we have to replace gear on a rotating basis on every 5 years, so we have a replacement plan. The problem is this year with the 8 new hires or 7 new hires, the replacement plan got all out of whack, so we had to find money to buy extra sets of new hires.
Thank you.
yeah, it's fully encumbered. And our revised budget is the same as our original budget, so.
Okay,
The budget we are all working on is, because when we start crafting it, it's, there could be budget line transfers between now and then, so sometimes I can add.
And item 55319, vehicle maintenance. Chief, I believe you were saying this is a similar issue with invoices and...
It is. This is a scary line. In July, Russ and I had a discussion that we blew the engine in our 10-year-old, we call it engine 2, and it's not due to be replaced for another, 2032-ish. So we have decisions to make, and we were fearful that the cost could have escalated to a number near $70,000 for a Cummins diesel engine. Just a caveat here, 70 grand, although it sounds like a lot of money, is only 10% of a new truck, so it's still something we would have considered. After tearing it down and looking at it, and a lot of help from Harry Lindsay at the DPW, we were able to do a top-end work with pistons and whatnot, replace the turbo, and our total all-in on that was about $16,000. So that one incident wiped out the vast majority of vehicle maintenance. Pump testing was just completed, maintenance, and we're through our cycle. So again, we show a number in the area of 2,500 or 3,000 left in that to carry us to the end of the year. But that just kind of demonstrates or illustrates how quickly these budget numbers can go awry with just one incident. So.
Pretty unusual for an engine to blow out on a fire. We're talking about the engine, the
motor, the
motor of the fire engine to blow out. I've never heard of such a thing.
It is very, although in speaking with the manufacturer, and I'm not defending them, but this is what we indicated. 2010 was the first year that fire apparatus was required to use the diesel emissions process, of what we now know as the DEF. And there was a lot of, let's just say, trial and error on a custom-built fire engine that you don't see in a dump truck or an over-the-road 18-wheeler that can go 300,000, 400,000 miles. I think E1 would agree that some of the trial and error contributed to the overpressurization and the damage to the truck. So we, though it's out of warranty, unfortunately, the cost could have been far greater to the town. But the truck runs like a top. We pump tested it a week ago, and our internal guy, Tim Soroy's, that truck performed better than every other truck in the fleet. So we're
Thank you for that.
reasonably confident that the truck will continue to serve the town.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Anything else in the expense budget that people have questions about? So, Corey, what would be the new benefits total for fire department?
Oh, can I do, I'm willing to offer one more reduction, if you will.
Wow.
Rare, right? I spoke to
You've been
town
more
manager
than
Dean.
conciliatory over the years. Eric. It's not
Well,
rare.
you can do the benefits total, but in line 55042, communications equipment, after consult with Russ, we've decided that after 3 years of trying the reverse 911 system called Rave Mobile Safety, we're extremely satisfied with their product. The dispatch supervisor and the police chief, although he's left me all by myself here now, agreed, and we feel that signing a 3-year service agreement with them was a prudent approach, so we can reduce that line for not only this coming year by $281, but that will remain subsequent for the next 2 years. So I would offer that line 55042 be reduced to $10,793, because that's what we'll spend out of that line.
Well, I'll move that motion.
Okay, there you go.
Second.
Chief,
Judy, second.
Excuse me. Sorry, that's out of turn because you were doing benefits.
In our
but-
big budget, you need the big budget. It's emergency management.
it is in the end, okay.
Yeah,
Did you get that,
so-
Joanne?
Here.
Thank you.
So that will be, Corey, so the origin code ending in 004, but it's 55042 in the emergency management communication
Right.
portion. It'll come in at $4,007.
Okay.
Okay,
What was the reduct?
281, I think my math was, it was 4286, and it's down to 4,007. That'll be the 3-year contract price.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you, sir.
So that's a relatively new,
Well, we've had the system for over 10 years. The company that we did business with years and years and years ago, Chief Kane was still police chief, and Chief Como, the reverse 901 was called Code Red. We decided to part ways, that the system became very, very clunky, and dispatch had a hard time initiating it, and the cost kept escalating. So we were able to purchase the contract with Rave for about 50% of what we were paying to Code Red. It was about $3,500 when we got in the door, 2019 or 2020. And its costs continue to go up 10-ish% a year.
so is that $11,000 going to be spent this year?
Oh, yes. Again, that's an amalgam of a number of lines. The consolidated budget does radio maintenance and repair, all our reprogramming. It's that one line for Rave Mobile Safety. So yes, it'll be spent this year because we have a monthly contract with our radio vendor. And again, Rave Mobile Safety is a one-time check we write in January.
The reason why I ask is for years it was about $15,000, and then for the last 2, it's been less than 4. So I just, for clarification, yeah, if you look back in the history,
I'll find a way to spend it. All right.
well, it was $3,520,
Right. Then it went to
37 and change last year, and then we're sort of in that same ballpark.
So we're rolling it back to 4,000. Again, but if you're just looking at emergency management part, the $11,000 is suppression radio maintenance, emergency management radio maintenance, Rave Mobile Safety. It's when the consolidated budget gets put together, it's a different number.
Yeah, okay. But presumably that's the way it was the last 3 years too, right? The consolidated budget, we didn't call out Rave or we didn't call out Rivers 911.
Presumably, but I don't have any other consolidated budget.
It's just intriguing that it was about 15,000 for years, and then it went to 3,500, 3,800, and now we're at 4,000, but the budget's 11. If you say you're going to spend it, I believe you. I was just wondering what the reason was for this significant drop.
Code Red itself was over 9,000. I think that was just what we said. Code Red was charged.
So maybe it's a
Well, I think it's two different, well, it's apples and oranges. I think the reason it ballooned to 15,000 was the reason we did away with Code Red, because the contract was over $9,000 a year. So that coupled to the radio maintenance would have pushed it to 15. When we decided to do business with Rave Mobile Safety for a fraction of that 9,000, we were able to reduce the cost of that line.
Could that be a coding issue, Russ?
Bob, are you on 55042?
I am, yep.
If you look at the historical, it's 15,000, 14,008, 15,002.
Up to 2020.
Yeah, and then it dropped.
That's my question.
Right. So
It
then
was
we
it
went-
was at 15 for years, and then the last 2 years,
Yeah.
it's been a quarter of that. And I just was inquiring minds want to know.
This code, yeah.
That's all.
Different vendor. No, that's the Rave Mobile Safety. Different vendor. We've always had the same stuff. That was the reason we went from Code Red to Rave. That's my answer. I'm sorry.
He's sticking with it.
I'm sticking with that one.
I mean, could it be a coding issue, Russ?
Could be. We can dig deeper into
I
it.
mean, it sort of is what it is. It just seems sort of odd. If it comes back next year and we've only spent $4,000 or $5,000, that's going to be a teeth grinder. At least on this side of
Historical.
this side of the table. All right, there's a motion on the table for $10,793, moved and seconded for communications equipment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so Corey, back to benefits.
Benefits total.
Benefits total. $1,341,470. 1341470.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that number.
Well, you don't have to move that because we don't have anything to do with it. So the total fire, including the motion we just made, would be?
Total fire is $4,088,563. 4088563.
I will entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved. Second, Judy.
So first moved by Tom and seconded by Judy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And thank you for all the discussion. So we'll do the health budget next.
Health, we have that interesting placeholder, 55055, and the consulting for future lead monitoring and other necessary work required by New Hampshire DES on the Sportsman's Club. That's what that placeholder is for. And otherwise, it is straightforward, no questions from the subcommittee's part, but
Any questions by
from the
committee? Corey, benefits total?
Sure. $42,060. 42060.
Thank you. And a new health total?
$152,117. 152117.
I'll entertain a motion on that amount.
So moved.
Second.
Judy and Tom. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So it looks like on the two vehicles that the fire department requested, as Judy mentioned, the inspector vehicle replacement, which is on page 42 of the CIP book, the subcommittee does not support that. The question I have, Russ, because I'm assuming that over time this will not go away and will be requested potentially in the future, but the number here does not totally jive with page 69. So I'm just wondering if that was, it's been updated for inflation or which number might be more accurate. Just so that we know going forward generally where we are.
We're talking about the inspector vehicle?
Correct. So in page 69 of the overall financials, it's shown as $41,250.
Yeah, that's an old number. It should be 49,313.
And then on page 44, utility one pickup, that was deferred in the town manager's budget. And again, the numbers, so presumably it's the same discussion. The 57,000 on page 69 was an old number, and the 61 is the more accurate.
61,986.
For future reference.
Bob, the subcommittee would just like to add a point, perhaps of discussion, but part of our thinking on not recommending the inspector vehicle replacement was this looked like a good possibility for choosing to replace it with an electric vehicle down the line. And given the current vehicle is only used under 5,000 miles a year, we thought perhaps you could hold off long enough to get a decently priced electric vehicle, or that is, when they are priced in an area that the town would consider buying.
So if I could, that's the difference between 41,000 and 49,000. 49 is the same police cruiser as the police are buying, so it is the, oh my God. Well, yes, but hybrid interceptor for that vehicle. So we listened to the sustainability committee and all that, and we felt that it would be a great way to introduce the fire department's first electric vehicle by replacing the fire prevention car that's on the road all day. A little history. The fire department believed, as the town did when we bought that car, that those little Jeeps would service the town well. I think it's proven that the DPW has abandoned it. The town building inspector has abandoned it. The vehicle will be 12 years old, and yes, I agree it has 60,000 miles, but a couple of things. Harry has looked at the vehicle. It is in very rough shape underneath. The roof has leaked. We didn't realize it. There was standing water pooling in the vehicle. Now we have black mold all over the carpets in the vehicle. And it just, and again, I had this discussion with Justin this afternoon. When my wife and I sit at the kitchen table and discuss whether or not we can afford to buy a new car, we have this same discussion. Can I push the car out one more year and not have a car payment? And we make the exact same decision that was made by the subcommittee. Can we buy one more year? The difference when you're dealing with a fire department is we have 13 vehicles in a fleet that we have to try to figure out how to prioritize and how to move the fleet along. The vehicle that was deferred is already 15 years old.
Right.
By the time the utility comes back up for discussion, it's already at $59,000 or 61 now. it's going to be even more money. If we want to get into an electric vehicle to replace the Jeep Patriot, it is not going to be less than $49,000 to begin to purchase it the next year. So I ask that the committee reconsider and support staying with a regular replacement schedule. We try to get 10 years out of a vehicle. I don't disagree. The vehicle does not have a tremendous amount of mileage on it, but mileage shouldn't be used as the only way to consider a vehicle's replacement. I think it's time for the fire department to move into the electric vehicle realm and put the fire inspector in an electric vehicle.
Kathy?
And actually, to clarify that, it's not an electric vehicle, it's a hybrid.
I'm sorry, a hybrid vehicle.
And what we discussed about electric is that it's just not there yet because that vehicle can sit at a fire for hours. And you need, we don't know if the technology would allow it to remain moving. Right? Or remain doing what it needs to do, because it does need to be on because it's doing some monitoring and whatever you guys do. I'm going to leave that up to you. But I will say I owned a Jeep Patriot and had that same issue. I no longer own the Jeep Patriot, but we did have the water issue. So it is inherent that the vehicle has this issue. I agree that it is, and you can't fit anything in that car. My dogs did not fit in that car.
I wouldn't let a dog run in that car.
You want to wait?
Sure.
Stand by your report?
If
You stand by your report?
I do.
Again, I went with Judy, but I do feel, I'm one that, I mean, just for efficiency, everything, I mean,
Well, why don't, again, this is great, and this is what I was hoping to do,
later, right?
some initial assessment, and then on CIP night, we can fully formulate our detailed analysis of mold and Jeep Patriots, and going forward from there.
Size of dogs.
Before we adjourn, one last house.
Well, let's also just review the substation and the police station a moment.
Yeah, we're going to do that. I just need to finish up a housekeeping. I just noticed
Right.
at the bottom of page 17 that the budget combines communication and health into public safety shared services, and even though we voted on the component parts, I think just for expediency, I have a number of 588,979 for the shared services. Is that correct?
I'm just going to get up there, Bob, 1 second.
Could you just reorient me to the page?
Page 17.
Thank you.
At the end of, communications and health are under public shared services.
Very last line.
And we didn't actually vote, although we did vote on the component parts. So I just want to make sure that the...
588,980. 588,980.
Because I thought, because for communications, we voted on 436,862. And for health, we voted on 152,117. And 7 and 2 is 9. So it should be 979, not 980. Wow. I mean, I hate to take up time. But it's
We're
just the way it's
impressed.
always,
I'm telling you what my
impressed.
computer's telling me.
I'm really impressed.
Well, let's just do it this way.
Just around.
I'll kick in the bucket.
I've lived in this town long enough to know that somebody would come back and text Nico and say, Kelly doesn't know what he's doing, they're $1 off.
I think
I'm going to take care of it.
we're dealing with a rounding issue.
I'm sure. I'm going to call it 588,979 because that's what we voted on as a component part. So I'll entertain a motion for shared public safety services of $588,979.
So moved.
I will second that.
Judy moves, Ton seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't you dare.
If it makes you happy, aye.
Okay, Judy, a
Okay.
brief discussion on the fire component of the public safety.
And the, just on the vehicle, I hope Harry has some good epoxy that he can use on the current vehicle to keep it going for another year. That's the plan.
Keep it for
We wanted to talk briefly about the police station fire substation to make sure we've got all of your questions, concerns going into the final discussion at CIP night. So there's no new requests for information. And at the last minute, we'll be able to have a full-throated discussion that night, but fully informed by all the information everyone needs.
Further questions or comments?
Yeah, Chris.
Chris?
Because I don't know how the process works, the discussion we had Monday night with the select board, they took in a lot of input, and there was some discussion on how the budget laid out and things that were listed as alternate versus being inclusive. And my request to the select board was that they would, consider either rewording that or reshaping that. Is that something we're going to see presented differently, or will we see the exact same presentation when we come to CIP night?
The intent would be that the intent of the joint meeting on Monday was that this committee provides their input on the financial aspect of this proposal, and then we will discuss that again on November 17th, and we would hope that between Monday and then, if there were requested changes, that would be at least discussed by the board, and some sort of response come back to us. Again, we are their recommendations committee, so they listen to us, but are not beholden to what we say.
Sure.
But I think they all heard what some of the comments were. Excellent comments and input by those who attended, and we'll do. No, because we had it on Monday night.
Yeah.
So if there are further questions on the details, then that you should articulate those now so that those can be responded to and before the 17th. Because no, we will not be having another full presentation. We'll have maybe some graphics up on the screen and all that, but I would not anticipate a full presentation, Ton.
Thank you. For the viewers at home, in case they're watching this meeting and didn't see, let's say, the Board of Select meeting on Monday, I think, just for the record, I want to state that, that there are a lot of meetings available on the town website, and good discussions have been had, and I've watched some of those retroactively after the fact as well, and it was a very good meeting on Monday as well. So if it seems like we're not deliberating this a lot, it's because it's been deliberated actually in different sessions. So I wanted to say that. The other thing, Chris, I think you brought up a really good point, and I thought about it after the meeting on Monday. And it relates, and maybe you answered it, and maybe I misunderstood your question, but I did think about it after the Monday meeting, which is this additional fee on this net zero energy sustainability thing. I don't know how to articulate it. And the way it was laid out on the presentation, I think this is the point you were making, the way it was listed on the presentation was, best case scenario, low end of the budget, worst case scenario, high end of the budget. And then underneath, sort of with an asterisk or something, was the 4% add-on for the...
To achieve that net zero ready, exactly.
For the net zero, and likewise, also on that same asterisk was the covered parking option, I believe. And I think that was confusing at the presentation. And I think what you were sort of asking for is you can do that in a horizontal, you can continue the grid just as it is and add those as lines horizontally. I think you know what I'm talking about, where you say add on sustainability or add on net zero, X amount, and it'd be, best case scenario, 4% on the low number, 4% on the high number.
Right.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but.
And it wouldn't change.
And similar, and it
wouldn't change the bottom line
Exactly.
figure.
Well, exact, but it would be a little more transparent in terms of, because the way it was presented, there was even some misunderstanding about the fact that the cost would be 4% greater than the worst case scenario, right? Do I make myself clear on that?
Well, for a little bit of clarity, after listening to Mr. Sharples go through it, I walked away with the understanding that if we came in somewhere near the best case scenario, we could afford the 4% net zero ready. But if the numbers came in with inflation and other costs on the high end, we couldn't afford it. It would be outside of the budget, and that was sort of the point I was inquiring on.
Or to put it another way, you'd have to ask for a larger amount in the warrant to cover that requirement, I think.
Precisely.
So that would be another way to frame it. And I think.
But keep in mind, we haven't asked for the warrant yet. The warrant number is Russ's recommendation, but we can change that.
Right, but it's going to inform the decision in terms of both our recommendation as well as what the select board ultimately decides, right?
Yeah, what we've always done as this committee on big projects, it really comes down to what do we think the taxpayers should afford for the value of the facility. And we've done that with water and sewer projects. We've done it with vehicles as well. So that's really what it's going to come down to on the 17th is, do we think that general number is a value to this community? And if it's slightly more, to include certain lead or environmental aspects, then this committee should make that recommendation if we feel that it's worth doing, because this is going to last us for the next 40 or 50 years, just like the current one has. So if we want to do it, now is the time to do it. Anything else?
Yes, I had a question, perhaps for Russ. Who would provide oversight on the part of the town?
Oh, great question.
For the project itself?
For the project, yeah.
I think we would look to hire a construction manager for that.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
That would be analogous to what the high school build out was like.
Similar to that, yes.
Correct. And wastewater plant.
Oh, did they say that with the wastewater?
Public Works was involved in it, but we hired an engineering firm to act on our behalf, boots on the ground.
Oh.
We would have a building committee as well for this, just as a sounding board for the construction manager and others that are working on it.
What would that mean? How would that work?
Probably representatives from the department, myself, Dave Sharples, the town planner.
So you would get status reports and updates and field problems and questions.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you,
Mr.
Justin
Chairman,
and Eric, for your time. And
I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that perhaps didn't tune in on Monday night that we have an open house.
Oh, yeah.
At the current public safety complex on Tuesday evening. I know you all have another meeting here that night, so we're going to start at 4:30.
next Tuesday?
The November 15. I'm sorry, I didn't finish the date. November 15. We're going to open the doors at 4:30, light refreshments. We'll go over the plan, and then that will break people into smaller groups, and the PD will show their side, we'll show our side. And I know many of you will have to dart back here by 6, but if there are still folks that are in the building, we'll gladly continue tours through, towards 6:30 until they're ready to go home. So there is that. Thank you so much for your thoughtful consideration of our budget.
So what time, 4:30?
4:30 to 6 is what's been posted, but like I said, if there's still taxpayers that want to go through after you guys leave, if you're there early enough, we'll get you in first, and then if you already have a general clue, that's great too.
That'd be
Otherwise,
great.
we'd love to have you.
Chief, you had me at refreshments, so there
There we go. There we go. It'll be underwhelming, the water and coffee, but the coffee pot's always on at the firehouse.
So, subcommittee, all set? You're comfortable with the way things have gone?
And thank you to the chiefs again.
Just to give everyone the reminder, next Wednesday, the 2nd of November, hard to believe, Andrew and myself will be presenting the general public works budget. and we'll have a report to you on Monday for you to review. So
Wednesday.
seeing no further comments or questions, we are adjourned until November 2nd, 6:30.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.